Ryan Seacrest here. When you have a busy schedule, it's important to maximize your downtime. One of the best ways to do that is by going to ChumbaCasino.com. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino games like spin slots, bingo, and solitaire that you can play for free for a chance to redeem some serious prizes. So hop on to ChumbaCasino.com now and live the Chumba life. Sponsored by Chumba Casino. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus terms and conditions apply.
Cinesmack contains spoilers of the spoiling type. If you don't want your spoilers spoiled, please turn back now. Otherwise, enjoy the show!
Gentlemen, let's broaden our minds. Lawrence?
Ladies and gentlemen! Welcome to the main event! This is Cinesmack! And the winner is...
Happy holidays, Cinesmacketeers, and welcome to bout number 117 and the start of our 11th year of Cinesmack, the podcast about films by filmmakers. I am your host, Mike Keeler. Joining me tonight is our panel of award-winning judges. First, filmmaker and owner of Arizona Ink Studios, Andrew. Look at the birds up in the tree, Zumwalt.
He's going to be coming around the corner right about now.
Second, filmmaker and owner of Cheshire Moon Films, Tom. God save my broken little body, Haggis.
Thank you for making me a part of this.
Third, writer, actor, and director, Kyle. Hey, we're not birds, we're a Jug-Band. Fine.
Why do we fall, Master Wayne? So that we find ourselves on the unemployment line.
Fourth, filmmaker and owner of One Genome Short Productions. Tomorrow you become a man of business.
Oh, man.
Someone better get that.
My
got a
phone
landline?
is ringing right now.
Old man's got a landline.
I do, and it's very useful for work.
Is your accountant calling?
Man, yeah, it's my talent agent calling.
Excuse me, sir. Your Betamax is out of repair.
Is this Klondike 54?
Yeah, it's my talent agent calling, probably to tell me I should,
Not do the show.
I should stop now.
It's good career advice.
Sorry about that.
That's all right.
It's fine.
That's funny.
We're leaving it. I'm not going to say anything else.
Nope, just leave it right there.
It
Okay.
was perfect timing.
So, growing up, I had to watch one of these films a lot when it was on HBO. My mom loved it. She always wanted me to watch it with her. So I have fond memories of watching one of these films. And the other one I didn't see until, the mid-90s or whatever it was. But just a little piece of trivia for those of you that are in Des Moines or around Des Moines, Merle Hay Mall Cinema, this was the first film they showed when they opened back up. And Merle Hay Mall Cinema, to a lot of us growing up, I mean, that's where you went to see like the Star Wars movies when they were re-released, and then, the new batch. And you went there for the event films because they had THX sound, a huge screen, and it was fantastic. It's no longer open now. So a lot of good memories. Anyway, let's poke the monkey, find out what we're talking about.
Ladies and gentlemen, fuzzy otters and fuzzy bears, welcome to the main event. Prepare to be whisked back in time by the ghost of childhood past to a magical time where adorable rodents sing in perfect harmony and classic tales are retold by talking frogs. Which holiday favorite will lift our spirits and which will be evicted and left out in the cold. In the first corner, from 1977, written by Russell Hoban and Jerry Jewell, directed by Jim Henson, starring Jerry Nelson, Frank Oz, and Jim Henson. Emmet, Otter's Jug-Band Christmas. In the second corner, from 1992, written by Charles Dickens and Jerry Jewell, directed by Brian Henson, starring Michael Caine, Frank Oz, and the great Gonzo. The Muppet Christmas Carol!
Okay, gentlemen, let's start off with our first round, which is writing.
These are both based on previous works. One is obviously known a lot better than the other one. But Jerry Jewell, kind of the in-house writer that they had at, what was it called at the time? Muppet Studios or Jim Henson Company? He was kind of their in-house writer. He did a lot of their writing. But he is very much in with that original Jim Henson crew that got them, put on the map. And both stories are really, really, really well done. So, like Mike, HBO showed Emmet Otter's Jug-Band Christmas ad nauseum through the 80s, like all the time. And I loved it. It's from my childhood, and I hadn't seen it in several decades. Muppet Christmas Carol, on the other hand, we working at a video store for several years, this was on all the time at Christmas time. So when I sat down to watch these two, I was struck by two things. One, Emmet Otter, I didn't remember as well as I thought I did. And I was very pleasantly surprised. And Muppet Christmas Carol, I'll be honest with you, I didn't think I was going to like it that much. But I must be in a weird spot because it completely blew me away on so many different levels. It went from towards the bottom of my favorite Muppet movies up towards the top in one viewing. And one of the reasons that I noticed that I liked it so much was in the writing. And one of the things that Muppet Christmas Carol does that none of the other, as far as I know, none of the other Christmas Carol movies really do this. Charles Dickens has this very beautiful way of writing and describing things. And it's done not so much in the voices, but more in between the dialogue. And what Muppet Christmas Carol did so well is that they took Gonzo and they make him the narrator, and he gets to deliver these really beautiful lines that describe the lamplighters and the setting, and it's genius because you lose so much of Charles Dickens' story when you take that out, and you get stuck with the carbon copy Christmas carols that we have been done dozens of times. And it's to the point where I pulled up the book and I was flipping through it while I was watching Muppet Christmas Carol, and there's so much taken word for word out of the book that I haven't seen in other versions of this. Right down to at the end of the movie when Gonzo has the line, and to Tiny Tim, who did not die, that is word for word from Charles Dickens' book. If you pull up the book, the word "not" is written in all caps. And it's just amazing to me. I was like, wow, that's not a Muppet joke, ribbing you and being like, oh, hey, because this is a kid's movie, we got to remind you that the little kid didn't die. No, that is word from word what Charles Dickens wrote in the 1800s. So, Emmet Otter's Jug-Band Christmas is also really, I liked it more than I thought I would as well. But Muppet Christmas Carol gets huge bonus points for oddly delivering Charles Dickens better than anyone else did.
It's interesting because when you do these movies, so you said they're based on older stories, Emmet Otter being very similar to something like a Gift of Magi type of O. Henry story. You have to think about, well, how do we judge these? Do we judge them on the source material or how the movie does the story? And I agree with you that I really liked Muppet Christmas Carol, and I love the way they do the story. It is pretty genius the way they mesh everything together. But I found myself really enjoying Emmet Otter as well. I love the simplicity of the story. I like how neat and tidy it is. None of it feels extraneous, and it all works to move everything forward. I really dug it. I like both movies, so this is going to be a difficult category for me. But I think these are based on great source material, and they were both really geniusly adapted to screen.
Yeah, we should sometimes consider maybe renaming this to Cinna Agree. Because sometimes we get into that a little bit, but I'm gonna go there. I agree. I think both of these are excellently written, and I don't recall if I'd ever seen the Muppet Christmas Carol all the way through in the past. I know I had seen Emmet Otter before, and probably multiple times. But it's interesting to look at these through the eyes of an adult and to see really how well written they are. They're both just excellently written. And I was a little bit surprised being an adult. Maybe I've just been cooped up too long and I'm a little, tense and emotional or something. But they really both struck me emotionally as well, and I think that has to do a lot with the writing and the creation of these characters that we care about. That I felt really strongly about both of these movies when I was watching them, and I was a little bit surprised by that, because you think of them as kids movies, and they are to a certain degree, but they are fully entertaining for a grown adult such as myself. So yeah, I Cinna agree with Kyle. This is going to be a hard category.
Yeah, I would say that's one thing that any type of the Jim Henson Studios, that production value when they write, it is definitely appealing to kids, and we definitely orient our thought process towards kids with the Muppets because it's so magical, and a lot of kids at younger ages, they don't understand how this all works, and as adults we do, but they have such a good job of writing these stories that appeal to all ages. And it's not just a thing to say this is for all ages. Like, they are really good at making sure their writing really hits a soft spot for both the adults and where the kids love it as well. The only other oddity in this that I don't know where we normally put this, but I think it goes into writing, is some of the music that they wrote.
I had that too.
Lyrics, just because fantastic. I remember seeing Emmet Otter's, and Where the River Meets the Sea is, it was on the Muppets Christmas Carol, or a Muppets Christmas album, and that song, it brings you back to that childhood moment. At the same time, so there's just some really good lyrics. There's really good integration of the lyrics and some of the song and dance that happens in Muppet Christmas Carol. So they did a really good job of using the music to help push and tell the story instead of just music because I'm a musical kind of thing. So I have to give a shout out to all the people that helped write a lot of the lyrics and a lot of the music for that too.
Yeah, and I didn't know what category we wanted to talk about the music.
I guess I'm looking at more the lyrical side of it, not just the background. That they wrote some music specifically for these with lyrics that help tell the story, and I think that's important differentiation compared to when we talk about overall, when we talk about like the big huge orchestration music, because I think that's a little bit different.
Yeah, and I think we've run into that with. I don't know if these would technically be considered musicals, But when we have discussed musicals in the past, we've run into that. Like, where does that fall? Is that under the writing, or is that under music, or what? Where do we put that? But either way, yeah, the lyrics. What's the first song in Emmet Otter about the grandma's
about the bathing suit?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
That's
loved
a fun
that.
song.
Just made
It's
me
a
so
really
happy.
fun song.
Yeah, yeah, and there's a lot of that in both of these movies where they're catchy and well written and entertaining and actually move the story along.
And Emmet Otter's music is like practical. I mean, it's part of the story, and it's
True.
if you were watching the story, you'd see this music. Whereas Muppet Christmas Carol is more of a musical approach to it, where Ebenezer Scrooge wouldn't actually literally be singing in the street. But but yeah, I like the music in Emmet Otter's way better. I mean, I think the music actually is the one downside to Muppet Christmas Carol. I'm not a huge fan, but again, it goes back to hearing those songs for 6 fucking weeks in the mall every day I went to work.
You actually think the acting parts, we'll get more into this into the acting, but I think the live action parts in A Muppet Christmas Carol may be stronger than some of the music in some cases. I like the music in Emmet Otter. It was more my style, I suppose. But the live action meshed with the Muppets in Christmas Carol was flawlessly done. And that's something Jim Henson does. They just do that so perfectly.
Time's up. Let's put it to a vote. Tom?
Muppet Christmas Carol.
Andrew?
Royo, I think I'd go with the Muppet Christmas Carol,
Gabe?
I see Tom's point. It's very convincing. However, I'm going to go with Emmet Otter.
All right. Kyle?
Boy, this one's difficult for me, but I am a sucker for O. Henry stories. I'm going to go for Emmet Otter.
All right. So just so you guys know, there's not a lot of trivia about Emmet Otter. So this is a double for the Muppet Christmas Carol for writing. According to producer and director Brian Henson, Gonzo and Rizzo narrate because he wanted to incorporate the narration and prose of the original novel, which Tom already hit on. And if you look very closely in one of the crowd sequences, one of the background Muppets is a lobster hanging out of a basement window. This is a reference to the line, quote, like bad lobster in a dark cellar, end quote. One of Charles Dickens' weirder turns of phrase. And I remember seeing that, and I'm like, that's odd. What's that lobster doing in there?
Yeah.
So there you go. Let's move on to our second round. Acting.
First of all, I want to point out that there's no live action humans as characters. So they are completely acting purely with their Muppets to tell the story. So these people that are doing this are highly trained professionals, and they've been doing this for a long time. However, Emmet Otter's was done in the 70s. It was late 77, 78, somewhere in there. I don't remember. Sorry. And they had quite a bit of a smaller cast than the Muppets Christmas Carol, even for voices. So they were doubling up and doing a lot more. And there's just some really good people singing and delivering lines that really make these characters come alive. It's hard because you don't have a person on screen showing specific facial expressions or turning a certain way or being able to shine light in the way that you want to get the right kind of moment. And yet they can do all of that with these simple Muppets and these voices. And the acting comes 100% from their voice, how they say things, how the Muppet moves or addresses people or other Muppets. And it's just, I think that's what's so magical about what they do. It really brings alive these characters that aren't really characters. They're just Muppets. And so it's amazing to see that these voice actors can completely change the perspective of the way you look. Frank Oz is, a legend when it comes to this kind of stuff. I had to look up Ma Otter. Marilyn Sokol, I think is how you pronounce it. Her voice is unbelievable. She is very well. She can speak very well, but she can sing. Man, that woman's got a voice. And so I'm not entirely sure what else she has done. But
Crocodile Dundee 2. And The Producers and Foul Play and The Basketball Diaries.
But she hasn't acted?
Yeah, she's acted.
Oh, okay.
Crocodile Dundee 2, The Producers, New Producers, Foul Play.
Oh, it's that. Okay, yeah, it was really impressive. It really stuck out to me when she was singing, and the way that she was very warm, and you just had this love to, kind of, you wanted to be the kid. You wanted to be Ma's kid because she was just so warm. To give everybody else a chance, Muppets Christmas Carol. So they are, as Kyle touched on, they are amazing at mixing live action actors with these Muppets and being able to get the performances, to get the reactions mixed together all at the same time. And Jim Henson's studio is just amazing at doing it. Now, Brian Henson is the director because Jim Henson had died a couple of years earlier, and they still pull it off. And they have an amazing amount of talent from Michael Caine, which was a perfect pick for Scrooge. I think he's probably one of my favorite Scrooges next to Bill Murray, but I really, really enjoyed Michael Caine as Scrooge. He was so perfect for the job. He works out so well. And then, of course, you end up with all of your traditional Frank Oz's, now Stevie Whitmore, who is now like your traditional Kermits, and let's see, the Pigs and Rizzo. And so it's really, really cool to see all of that. And again, they just are really good at what they do. I don't know. I really enjoyed Michael Caine's performance, probably out of all of them, just because Michael Caine's awesome.
Well, it's Michael Caine. He could have just gone to any movie studio and been like, we need to do Christmas Carol. And any studio would have been like, shit, you're right, Michael Caine. We need to do Christmas Carol with you. I mean, he could have done any version he wanted.
Sure. I can see that.
He had that kind of weight, and he went with the Muppets, and, good call on him.
Yeah, very good call on him. I found it very interesting. I found it very interesting. Oh, I was just going to say, I found it really interesting that the Great Gonzo is credited as Charles Dickens, and Rizzo the Rat is credited as Self.
Yeah.
As actors. And I thought that was really funny.
Muppets movies have a lot of fun with the credits, which, I guess you could tack on a little bit of writing, but I think that's clever. Little inside things that adults would get and laugh at that maybe kids wouldn't. So I'll speak a bit about the acting. Of course, Michael Caine is Michael Caine. He's really good. It's hard for him to give a bad performance, I think. He's great as Ebenezer Scrooge, and I'm sure a classically trained actor, so he can do these prose type situations. And he's curmudgeonly, but not to the point of no redemption. There's always this bit of hope you have that he can turn things around. And of course, if you know the story, you know where it's headed. But I think he tips that very early in the story, and I like that a lot. When he gives Cratchit and the bookkeepers a day off, you kind of see this little glimpse almost of warmth. The narration idea was brilliant, just simply genius to put them in the movie, to allow them to deliver that and to let them deliver it, breaking the fourth wall to the audience. I think the use of Gonzo and Rizzo, they do the same gags over and over again, which I found got a little bit old. How many times can you get smashed by a window? But The blend of live action and Muppets was astonishing. I really, really liked it, and I think they pull it off. I want to speak about it a little bit more in directing, but I think they do something so creative and so smart in that movie, and the way they blend those two worlds. But I think it's more of a conversation for directing we can have. Emmet Otter, all marionette type puppets mostly. It seems like, especially when you see them full body. I think puppetry is such an amazing work of art and something I would be so bad at that I'm always astonished by it. And Henson Studios does it as well as anybody in the world ever has. I love the character and the life they give the characters in Emmet Otter. I love the personalities. They all fit the way the characters are modeled. They all fit the way they speak and act and move. And I think that was brilliant, considering it all had to be done in puppetry, that there was no live action people on screen at all for the entire movie.
And in the 70s.
Yeah, right. When you think about the time, too, it makes everything a lot harder. And some of the things that really astounded me were some of the little things, just like birds flying across screen. I'm just like, man, that's what a nice little touch. You didn't need to add that. It's like set dressing that you didn't think about. But it's like a little mark of quality to me that you think about making the world feel lived in and real. I really dig that. Man, Michael Caine. I want to listen to him narrate an audiobook. He's got such a great voice.
Yes.
I was going to say, you find out, I'm not a huge Michael Caine, I don't want to say fan, but I don't know that much of his career. But it's pretty obvious after this movie, he's got a soft spot for comedy and does it well, considering he made a movie with the Muppets. But you find out later in his career when he does Austin Powers that he turns out he's really good at that too. So yeah, just all around super talented and so much to fawn over in these categories for these movies and the way these things are done.
Yeah, I just want to give a shout out to all of the Muppet performers because there are so few of them who do so many of the different characters. And so these are really talented people who are doing, they're bringing out different personalities in their puppeteering, and they've got different voices. And it's really amazing when you look at the credits, you expect to see a whole bunch of people, and you don't. There's just a handful of kind of regulars who do so many of the different characters, and you're like, how are they doing them all? They have to plan for that too. They can't just they can't all be in the same, unless I can do one character with one hand and one with the other, they can't be in the same
might
shot.
Be the way they're doing it.
And Frank Oz, he's doing 6 characters. 6.
Yeah. And he's still out there doing iconic characters.
And sometimes you have your puppeteer and you have your person that's doing a voice. So you have 2 different talents that are meshing together to bring this thing to life. And that to me is just, I'm sure in Emmet Otters, they were the puppeteer and the voice at the same time. But in Muppet's Christmas Carol, there's just no way.
Well, and then the other thing I want to say about Emmet Otter is that so I want to give them so much credit for their singing. Their voices were so beautiful, and their harmonies were so tight. I was like, this is just amazing. They just sound so good. So I just wanted to give a quick shout out to the singing talent in particular in Emmet Otter. I think we've got great acting with Michael Caine on one side and great singing in Emmet Otter on the other.
All right. That's time.
I just want to say too, I love in Emmet Otter that the Nightmare Band won, because I was watching it, like, these guys are clearly better. I'm sorry, Jug-Band, but 1977.
They have a whole production.
That was my first that's your first introduction that you can lose, right? Because most movies you win, it's like Bad News Bears. Yeah. Like it makes you realize the good guys can lose. Sorry, Tom.
And it's okay.
Yeah,
and
it's
okay.
It all works out in the end.
They made it okay and made it a teaching lesson, which is what their Jim Henson studio is so good at doing, is taking that bad and making it so good.
Yeah. Yeah, they never play down to their audiences.
No. ever.
Right.
And they, I mean, they cater to the kids. Like, that's their audience, but they never talk down to them.
Right.
Right? It's fantastic.
Oh, they just...
All right, Andrew.
It's so hard. I'm gonna go for probably the singing and just the complexity of it being done in the 70s, Emmet Otters, just because that's pretty astounding of what they pulled off at that time, and just the singing is amazing.
All right. Gabe?
Yeah, man, it is tough. Tough.
Yeah.
I don't know. I have to say I really, really enjoyed the same things that Andrew mentioned in Emmet Otter, so that's going to be my vote, too.
All right. Kyle?
For me, Michael Caine wins this category for me. I'm going to go with the Muppet Christmas Carol.
All right. Tom?
I have to go Michael Caine too on Muppet Christmas Carol. He was acting against like cloth and fabric and fur, and like he was emoting. I mean, the scene with Tiny Tim, and I mean he was giving it his all. So I gotta give it to Michael Caine.
That one's close.
Yeah, it's tough.
I feel like should have gone first. I could have swayed you.
Before production began, this is another two-part Muppet Christmas Carol trivia. Before production began, Sir Michael Caine told producer and director Brian Henson, "I'm going to play this movie like I'm working with the Royal Shakespeare Company. I will never wink. I will never do anything Muppety. I am going to play Scrooge as if it is an utterly dramatic role and there are no puppets around me." Henson replied, "Yes, bang on." I think that's why it's such a great performance.
Yeah, it really is.
I think that's because he took it seriously. He wasn't like, "Oh, look at me, I'm with a bunch of Muppets."
Yeah, he's next to a 6 foot tall,
right?
Next to a 6.5 foot tall, fat, chubby man dancing around in a dress. And
right.
You'd think he's next to another actor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yep. And also, I want to point out, you guys talked about it for a little bit about how good he is at comedy, and I've just learned from all the movies, TV shows that I've consumed through the years that usually the best dramatic actors are really good at comedy.
Yeah,
like they get that. They're known for drama, and when they switch and do comedy, it's fantastic.
I think that in order to be a great comedian, you also have to be. You first have to be good at drama.
Yeah.
You have to. I think it's hard because how many of these roles do we see, even in comedies, where it takes a dramatic turn for a period of time?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And they still have to do that, and I found that the best ones, the best comedies, have actors who can do the dramatic part and they're good at it first, and then because I think that informs the comedy a little bit.
Yes,
that drama and that humanity.
Yep.
I think of like Robin Williams in particular.
Oh,
like
absolutely.
He's just crazy over the top with his comedy stuff, but man, he could pull off a dramatic role.
Yes, he can.
Anyway.
This was the first major Muppet project after creator Jim Henson's death. The role of Kermit the Frog was handed down to Steve Whitmire. He said he was incredibly nervous about taking over such an iconic character. The night before he recorded Kermit's songs for the movie, he had a dream where he met Henson in a hotel lobby and told him how unsure he was. In the dream, Henson reassured Whitmire that the feeling would pass. After waking up, Whitmire was confident and able to do the part.
Huh.
So,
what big shoes to fill.
Oh, absolutely, yes. Right? Yeah. Like you're taking over, number one, you're taking over Kermit the Frog. Number two, you are taking over Jim Henson's role. Like he made that role. That was his. That's how he started. And that would be big shoes to fill.
Kermit the Frog is probably the most iconic Muppet.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
to be able to just turn around and mimic his voice to where it's as good as Jim Henson's, and have to be able to still play the character the way Jim Henson would do it. That would be tough. That's not like I'm gonna start playing Captain Kirk. This is an iconic role that kids and people of all ages from generations know Kermit the Frog and know who Kermit the Frog is, and that would be incredibly intimidating.
Yep.
Did he also do Kermit's voice? Because I think that would be
yes,
that would be the most important part, is to get that voice, because it's very distinctive.
He was able to mimic Jim Henson's version of Kermit the Frog the best, because Brian Henson tried it first, and Brian Henson wasn't quite right.
Here's another little piece of acting. I found it interesting. David Hemmings, Ron Moody, Peter O'Toole, David Warner, and George Carlin were among the actors who were considered for the role of Scrooge.
George Carlin?
Yes.
That would have been interesting.
That would have been interesting.
Yeah,
yes.
I could see that. It wouldn't be the same. It wouldn't have the same tone, but
No.
I
could see it.
That might actually kind of be fun.
I mean, look at how long Carlin did. Was it Thomas the Train or?
Yeah.
Yeah, he did
Thomas Tank
the
Engine.
Yeah, Thomas Tank Engine. Yep.
Yeah.
All right.
Until I think Alec Baldwin took over.
Yep. Let's move on to our third round, which is directing.
Boy, that none of these rounds are really very easy for these two movies, and it's kind of unexpected for me. I expected these to be light and enjoyable, but I didn't think I would enjoy them as much as I did, and I also didn't think that they would have such high production value throughout. I mean, on every level, these things are so well done. How do I decide on the directing? Because they're both very competently directed. I think, Tom, did you touch on Emmet Otter earlier, where it was just there wasn't any more to the story than needed to be there, or was that you, Kyle? I don't remember who said that.
Kyle.
And I think that's really important part of the directing there too. And that may have been more of a technical decision based on where it was going to be shown. We've got an hour slot on TV, and so we just got to keep it short or whatever. But I think there's a lot of skill to get all of the important parts of the story in, and build that story and build those characters in that amount of time. I don't know if those choices. I think Kyle mentioned this too, with like the birds flying by and the ducks on the water, and all of those kinds of things. So those are touches I assume that the director probably had an impact on and added. And of course, that director is the iconic person we were just talking about, being Jim Henson. And I think he pulled it off just brilliantly. And I think he also had, an advantage with some of the technical things, knowing what you can do technically to get these things. The one that baffles me, and maybe we'll talk about this sometime, maybe you have trivia on this, Mike, I don't know, is in Emmet Otter, where they're rowing down the river in real water, and there's puppeteers underneath. And how did they do that? That is really amazing. Just amazing. And to take these inanimate objects and make them something that we care about really takes some skill too. And and then his son took over the reins and did a really excellent job with A Muppet Christmas Carol. It is really well done. And I don't know, Tom, maybe you want to talk about it later, but you mentioned a missing scene. And now I didn't see the version with a missing scene, a scene that was cut, a very important scene. And now I want to see it because I think that would even raise my opinion of it and how it was directed and put together. And the blending of live action and Muppets, and again making us feel so strongly for these characters, even though they're puppets. Tiny Tim. My girlfriend and I watched it, and I was kind of embarrassed because I was kind of bawling, and I think it says a lot about the quality of the filmmaking and the quality of the direction that they can make me feel so strongly about a puppet, a little frog, and it's God, this is going to be a hard category too. I don't know how to make this decision. Somebody help me out.
I mean, I was kind of on the fence too, and the puppets on the water thing is incredible. And that goes. I mean, they did that in the Muppet movie with Kermit the Frog and Rainbow Connection with the opening song, and they just kind of let you know right away this is going to be something special. And Muppets have always done that. They always open the movies with this real kind of we're going to show you something new. And even the
bike riding,
it's what
the bike riding wasn't from the Great Muppet Caper, right?
In the Muppet movie,
yeah.
That it's not the very first shot of the movie, but the beginning of Christmas Carol, that wonder where the turkey pops out of the box and then the cow walks by and it hits it hits the guy in the face and the camera comes around. I mean, there's like Muppets moving and stuff in the background, and it comes in on Gonzo, and then they do that whole opening take with the I know him as well as the back of my hand. That's all like one shot, and it's tough doing like a wonder with people.
Right.
But to be able to do this, and they're so good at it. So I'm leaning, I lean heavily towards Christmas Carol just because that open shot is really good. And there's some really good cinematography in it too that, you wouldn't see in a movie, typically a Christmas movie you think's for kids. So,
and that struck me too, is how nice the lighting was in A Christmas Carol, the Muppet Christmas Carol. It's not what you expect from a Muppet movie, like, wow, this is really nice. It looks good.
And to your point, Tom, think of like all of just directing that where your actors can't actually see like you. They can't, they're looking at monitors that are, below the floor or hidden away somewhere, or sometimes they're just on set doing their thing and they can't see the director at all or see the other people around them at all. And so they're having to envision the same time that the director is, and to be able to direct that and be able to get that to all work in harmony is astounding when you have that big of a cast. It's quite baffling. I think it would be 10 times worse than, working with bad kids who can't act. Or pets, or animals, I think this would be way worse than any of that.
And there's a part of me that I really don't. I try to avoid behind the scenes Muppet stuff. I don't want to know how they do. I don't want to know how they ride the bikes, and I don't want to know about holes in the floor and that kind of thing. I just I still want to believe that these are talking, and I know that they're not, but it's that suspension of disbelief. I hold on to.
It's the magic that the Muppets brought. And that's what is so great about the Muppets, is they brought this magic. No matter what they do, whether it be the Emmet Otters or the Muppet Christmas Carol, they have this magic that, like you said at the very beginning, I think everyone said there was some nostalgia, this thing that brought you back to be feeling like a little kid to it. And that was the magic of the Muppets. And I think it holds true today, even.
Yeah.
And
it's the power of storytelling too, like Gabe was talking about. You could feel emotion for this little bit of felt with a fake crutch, but that is just the power of story and the way it's told and presented to us. And so much of that falls in the director's purview. And I just wanted to discuss one little thing that maybe sparked maybe just a tiny bit of discussion, but I think there must have been an agonizing decision when the Muppets started, because we know from making movies that when you start with a blank piece of paper, you can agonize over every decision about how everything is supposed to happen. But there must have been some time when they had to discuss, well, how are we going to explain these Muppets exist in a world with real humans? And I think they made the most brilliant choice was that they just do. They didn't over-explain it or say this is some parallel universe. They start the movie by showing you a world in which Muppets and humans live, and nobody bats an eye at it. They
Nobody
open a
questions it
window.
anymore.
Right, exactly. And by doing that, they get the audience to buy in, and they don't question it either. A window opens and a human pops out. A window opens and a Muppet pops out. And in your brain, you go, Muppets and humans live together in this world. They never mention it. It's so smart, and it's one of those little things. Calling it a trick is undervaluing it, but it's a way to tell a story visually that gets your point across in a beautiful, elegant way. And sometimes that is such a hard decision to make about how you're going to do that. And I think the tendency would be to go, no, this is weird. Let me explain it. Hold on. But they don't do that. They just present you with this world, and you're in to the magic with them. And I think it works great for kids, right? Because kids maybe don't question it. But it works on us as adults too, because we just buy it. It's perfect.
And they've been
so smart.
Yeah, and they've been doing it for years with, starting with Sesame Street and like even the Muppet movie. Like you watch the Muppet movie and the interaction between Muppets and live action, actors, Kermit the Frog sits down next to some guy on the bench and he doesn't even, okay. He doesn't even bat an eye. He's just like, okay.
Yeah.
And they have a conversation. You are absolutely correct in that. They somehow trick your mind to believing that, this is normal without ever doing it. It's quite genius.
Yeah, the best way to explain it is to not explain it.
Yeah.
I think Mike
mentioned that's the way it is.
I think Mike mentioned earlier not talking down to your audience. That's a brilliant it's a great example.
Yeah.
You don't explain it. They just, this is the world we're in now.
It is. That's what it is.
Yep.
You have to accept it, and you accept it because they show you that world living and breathing, and then you're taken away on this magical journey. I'm getting goosebumps talking about it. It's so simple, but it's so smart.
And it brings that magic into the real world to where you think Kermit the Frog could actually knock on my door someday.
I have no doubt in my mind I could see the guy underneath the chair with Kermit the Frog, and I would still talk directly to the puppet.
Yeah.
I just have no doubt that they would convince me that there's a magic they know that would get me to talk to that puppet.
You never went on Floppy, did you?
No.
I was on Floppy, and I have to say, I talked to the puppet. Like, I totally do. But I talked to the puppet.
Dwayne was like, didn't exist when you talked to Floppy.
Yep.
And Dwayne was, I don't know.
The sidekick. Dwayne was
in your
the
mind,
sidekick. Yep.
Was just this thing that was there because I'm talking to Floppy.
All right. That's time. Let's go ahead and vote. Gabe?
Oh, man, again, difficult choice. I'm going to go with the one and only original Jim Henson and Emmet Otter.
All right. Kyle?
Boy, it's really hard for me. I'm going to have to give this round to A Muppet Christmas Carol.
All right. Tom?
Muppet Christmas Carol.
Andrew?
Oh, I think I want to give it to the Muppets Christmas Carol.
All right.
Your accent is flawless.
I should point out too, for those of you that don't live in Iowa, there was a show on 70s and 80s called The Floppy Show. And it was a locally made show where they also played Tom and Jerry cartoons. But anyway, it was called The Floppy Show, and the main character was Floppy, this dog that was out of this carpeted box that Dwayne Elliott used to talk with. And if you went on the Floppy Show, that was kind of a big deal around here back then.
And he was a very, very good ventriloquist.
He was.
With Floppy. So it was very believable.
All right, trivia. Here is actually one for Emmet Otter. The scene where the drum rolls past Emmet and Ma Otter took over 200 takes to get right. Now, I want to remind you guys, back in 77 when they 76, 77 when they made this, that's film. 200 takes on film. Not ones and zeros, film. Halfway through production, Sir Michael Caine realized that A Muppet Christmas Carol was Brian Henson's directorial debut. Caine was deeply impressed.
Well,
all right.
Me too.
Yeah.
Not that it matters.
Fourth and final round overall.
Well, we've come to this, gentlemen, and what I think is maybe one of my favorite Christmas movie Cinesmacks we've had. So in overall, we talk about a lot of different things we didn't get a chance to talk about, and I feel like we've talked about quite a bit about these movies. So I'll just mention the music again real quick. The music in Emmet Otter is very soulful. You're right there?
Yep, sorry.
Okay.
Scotch went down the wrong pipe.
Is very soulful and very moving and touching, and I really enjoyed it. I love the big productions in A Muppet Christmas Carol. I think it's a feat of, I think I overuse the word genius, but it is in this case. I think puppetry is such a unique art that I'm always in awe of it when it is done at this kind of level. And that's something we don't get to talk about. We see musicals, we see comedies, we see stories that are retellings of old tales. But to see movies that rely so heavily on puppetry is something unique for us. It's something we don't get to do a lot. And I constantly found myself in awe of the amount of manual work and syncopation and the amount of frustration it must have been at some times, the amount of takes it must have taken to get some of this stuff right, the amount of practical effects they had to do in Emmet Otter, all the problem solving that had to go on, and just found myself in awe of these movies. Especially when I think it would be more frustrating to have control over something like a puppet and get it wrong than it would be when you have a kid or a dog and something you can't control. I think Andrew brought that up. Like, if you mess up as a puppet, you're like, man, this is my job. I know what I'm doing. But you just feel like you screwed it up, and you got Michael Caine there looking at your dumb felt ass, and you're like, you just a hand up some guy's butt, and you can't get it right. That's got to be frustrating. I just watched these movies, and I was like, man, this has got to be so much work. And it really impressed me. And I thought they both had a real touch of festive spirit to them that really made me like long for Christmas and feel the joy of Christmas and the season, which is what a Christmas movie should do in a lot of ways. It should give you that feeling that you only get this time of year. So I'll turn it over to you guys.
Imagine when you're talking about the overall, just the production, imagine how many actual Muppets from that they actually had to create that were, similar in a sense. Because, like, for instance, when Ma slides down the ice and lands onto the ice, that is a completely different version of Ma, so that they can slide her down to where she lands on the ice and then sits up, and you can tell that that's not a marionette. But then when her son gets up and walks away, he is a marionette. And I mean, imagine all of those tiny different versions that you can do to be able to set up each scene and to create that, so that way you can do all of those practical effects. And I'm sure there were thousands of them in the Muppets Christmas Carol. And those are the things that, as I go through and you look at some of the technical stuff, the second or third time you watch it, when you're not really concentrating on the magic anymore, you think of just all of, I just, the standings, the walking ones, the ones that are actually doing facial expressions, or ones that have eyes. And it's just, it baffles the mind of how much probably went into just the pre-production to build all of your actors. Because normally you bring an actor in, you put makeup on them, you put, their hair and whatever costumes and stuff, and they better know their lines. This, you're physically building your actors. And you're building them for all the different scenes.
Yeah, think about your sets, too. They have to incorporate.
And your sets.
That's the one thing I wanted to mention.
They have to accommodate.
Incredible.
Yes. And to make it look like Michael Caine is standing and not standing on a riser where everyone else is below him or onto the side or whatever, that they're all roughly at the same level. So you have real perspective of your actor versus your character. It's just, I can't even imagine. And to get a camera in there and your sound guy.
Plus you got to get a camera in there.
Your crew and everybody else.
It boggles the mind, the amount of work it must have been.
Yeah, I think we do really have to mention the sets and the, all of the props and those kinds of things. I was amazed at the beginning of Emmet Otter. I'm like, is this real?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously it's not a real city, but I mean, is this whole thing, did they build this whole thing and move the camera through it?
Oh, I would assume they did. Because at the very beginning, when they pull out and they're like going across it, that has to be an entire set.
Yeah.
It's not like they had
incredible.
computers.
And the detail.
Yeah.
Yeah, the detail. I mean, they don't cut corners at all.
They built a model layout.
Incredible. And the same goes for a Muppet Christmas Carol. The detail in the sets and the little props and all those kinds of things, the carts and everything. Just so much detail. Just incredible.
And can you imagine putting, 50 actors where they can move around and they can adjust to those props or to that set or whatever.
Then there's that.
And then you have the other 50 people that are actually not a part of the set, but their character is, and that's the Muppet that they're controlling, and they have to have room somewhere too. On top of all of that, and have to avoid those props and the set changes and the things that are moving around them, all through the Muppet.
Yep. It really is. It really truly is incredible when you think about it. Because, nowadays we would just rely on CG for so much of it. They'd just be standing in front of a green screen, or, the whole Emmet Otter village or whatever, would have been computer generated.
Well, these are.
Yeah.
That's what these are, right? These are what kids today consider, their Toy Story, their computer generated movies for kids. These were our computer generated movies for kids. That's what these were, because Muppets was this imaginary magic that happened, just like these computer generated Toy Stories and stuff for the kids now. This was our computer movies.
Yeah, Jim Henson was our Pixar.
Yes,
and it wasn't just it was, you knew that you were going to get a good story and good direction, and you weren't going to be talked down to as a child, and your parents were going to enjoy it too. It was a safe bet for a good night at the movies, and it's amazing how much work goes into it.
Well, I mean,
Jim Henson was an amazing director and actor and voice actor all in the same movie. And to me is incredible.
That's why Jim Henson movies and Pixar movies work, is the kids enjoy them, and they also throw in stuff for the adults. Right? They don't talk down to the kids. They don't treat the adults like idiots. They cater to the kids and the adults.
And they're good at it.
Very good at it.
Yeah. And they're not, so like the Shrek franchise was one where they came out, the first one did it really well. They followed all of those Pixar Muppet, rules that make for a good movie. But then for Shrek 2 and Shrek 3, they were just leaning on pop culture. Here's a joke that's going to age badly in 6 months. And it's sad when you see somebody go that way, but I don't know if you guys have seen the Muppets Now on Disney Plus, the new show that came out earlier this year, but it was a blast. It was so much fun, and they're still doing it. I know they don't have plans for any movies right now, but My kids loved getting together every Friday night and watching the new Muppets episode. And I'm just like, I can't believe it's 2020 and we are all gathering around the TV to watch Muppets, the new Muppet show that just came out.
I remember watching the Muppet Show as a kid with the fam.
Oh yeah,
because that was on at night as well. But you brought up a great point. These movies, and it's probably partly the story, but you can watch these movies. They've aged phenomenally. I mean, one of these is almost 40 years old. Well, it's over 40 years old, and it still is a fantastic movie that you could watch in 20 years from now, and it would still make sense, and it would still be amazing. And that to me says volumes for how they do these movies.
Yeah, definitely.
I have a question about one of the puppets, and I know, Tom, you don't like to
Muppets.
I'm sorry. I know you don't like to peel back the curtain and look behind the scenes, but does anybody know how they did the full size one, the Ghost of Christmas Present?
There was a guy in there.
Obviously,
Yes.
But how did he move both his arms and his mouth? How did they move
And his
the mouth?
eyes.
So I know at one point,
Radio
like
control.
even in the Muppet movie, the big hairy monster, a lot of his facial expressions were done by a remote
Was
with
it kind of animatronic?
animatronic stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
that
I
would make
guess,
sense because it was clearly a guy in a suit.
I would guess it was something similar because they were always breaking the barrier with that kind of stuff to make it look really real. So my guess is something similar. They do the same thing with Big Bird. Sorry, I don't mean to break everybody's suspension of disbelief.
Damn it!
I know Big Bird. There is animatronics with his eyes for him to blink, and so
Big Bird's not real.
he is real. You can touch him.
Yeah, that's right.
All right. That's time. Let's put it to a vote. Kyle.
Well, Ricky Gervais once said the greatest story ever told was A Christmas Carol, and the only way to make it better was a Muppet Christmas Carol. But I'm going to go on rewatchability, and I know that every year I'm going to watch Emmet Otter's Jug-Band Christmas, so that's what I'm voting for.
All right. Tom.
I am going to go with Muppet Christmas Carol. So.
All right. Andrew.
I'm going to go by a very finer than frog-haired line, The Muppets Christmas Carol.
All right. Gabe.
I think I'm going to go 4 for 4 and vote for Emmet Otter.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right.
It's tough, though.
You guys talked about music, and I wanted to bring up Thankful Heart gets stuck in my head whenever I watch The Muppet Christmas Carol. It's the end song. It's the song as Scrooge is going over to the Cratchits. And I don't know why, but that song gets stuck in my head, and it's still stuck in my head. And I watched this movie a week ago. It just pops in there, and it just starts going through the motions. So, I really like that song for some stupid reason. I think it's just catchy.
A lot of the songs are catchy.
Yes. Yeah,
they're really well done.
Well, and same with Emmet Otter, right? Like, at some point, if I was to ever drink myself into being unconscious, I would probably sing all of Emmet Otter. That's how much I've seen that movie. Just real quick, we visited the Jim Henson lot when we were in LA. We didn't get to take a tour, but we got to do a little walkthrough. And I wanted to bring up because he has made several appearances on this podcast. It is the old Charlie Chaplin Studios. Is what where Jim Henson Studios was, and I believe they're still there in that same spot. So here's your trivia. It's always boggled my mind how they did the effects for this certain Muppet and this is it. The Ghost of Christmas Past effects were created by making a special puppet that was operated in a tank of water. And then it says green screened here, but it was probably blue screened into the movie to make it look like it was floating.
Huh.
And that effect has always like gotten me. I'm like, that is fantastic. It's really well done. And it's a little bit unnerving, right? Because you have this little girl type voice coming out of this. And all you would have to do is change the lighting a little bit and change the script, and it would really become a horror film, which you could almost argue this is somewhat because he's being visited by ghosts, but it's just a little unnerving when you watch it.
That innovation that they came up with to create this effect and this magic is just, it's baffling. I would have never, think, oh, let's make a Muppet that we can put underwater and then we'll film it and superimpose it.
Right.
And
I don't know.
I mean, they really are just like problem solvers. They just like, look, this is what we want, and we're just gonna figure out how we're gonna make this work.
You guys remember there was a reality show, I think it only lasted one season, where it was people trying out to become part of the Muppets. Do you guys remember that at all? Because I remember watching the whole series.
No.
And essentially they were trying out to become the next, actor for the Muppets, and they had to make their own Muppets, and then they had to, there were certain criteria every show, and they would have to do something for that. And it was fascinating. I can't remember the name of it, but if you want, you can look it up.
Who wants to be a Muppet?
Is that your final answer? On the documentary about the making of the show of A Muppet Christmas Carol on the DVD, singer-composer Paul Williams says that Jim Henson asked him, nope, this is not for that. This is for Emmet Otter. Retract. Paul Williams says that when Jim Henson asked him to write the songs for it, Henson explained that the show was going to be a quote-unquote trial run for a proposed Muppet movie to check out whether the Henson Company could handle certain technical tasks needed to produce a full-length theatrical feature. When the Muppet movie 1979 came out 2 years later, Williams also wrote the songs used in that film. So Emmet Otter was a trial run. It was a trial run, and that's like one of the biggest parts of my Christmas as a kid. Was Emmet Otter.
Moving right along, footloose and fancy free.
I think the first Muppet movie I saw in the theater was Catch That Bird. Do you guys remember? Do you guys remember yours? Do you remember
the first Muppet movie I saw?
Yeah.
Great Muppet Cape.
I saw the Muppet movie.
I remember the Muppet Show.
I remember that. Yeah. Absolutely. I'm just saying in theater.
First probably introduction to the Muppets.
I'm just saying in theater. I think it was Catch That Bird.
Yeah. So the Great Muppet Caper, I remember that very well. I think I saw that in theaters as well.
And that one's still my favorite. So I have this is like a small piece of name dropping type trivia. So in Muppet Christmas Carol, way down in the credits, there's a credit for fabric dyeing and painting. So this guy was in charge of dyeing the Muppets' clothes for this movie. His name's Jason Weber. And right after this, a couple years after this, he came to our college and he did the costumes for one of the shows that we produced. Jason was down in the costume shop all the time, and we got to ask him all these questions about what it was like to work with the Muppets. And he was working. It was right after he got done working, doing work for Muppet Treasure Island. And so we all we all got to go to Muppet Treasure Island and, cheer when we saw his name, like 4/5 of the way through the credits. He is now
That's awesome.
He is now a creative supervisor for Jim Henson's Creature Shop, and he oversees all of their work on Sesame Street.
Oh wow,
That is
Crazy.
amazing.
So he went from just the guy that colored their clothes, and in 25 years, he's now like one of the lead guys at Jim Henson's Creature Shop, just working his way up. And
that's
so
amazing.
fantastic.
yeah, his name is right below Rizzo's personal caterer in the credits. So, so yeah, it's cool just to see. I knew him one kind of thing. So, but yeah,
That's really cool.
Yeah, I want to ask
Before
you guys real quick before we get on to recommendations. Who is your favorite Muppet?
Oh, that's
my favorite Muppet is Janice.
Janice.
She's the blonde in Dr. Teeth's band.
Oh yeah.
She's the only Muppet that makes me laugh every single time she talks. She doesn't talk a lot, but she always has those moments where she's just like shooting her mouth off and the whole room goes quiet and she says something but just like horribly embarrassing. So I've always loved Janice.
Has anybody ever been compared to a Muppet?
No.
I don't think so.
So, sorry, I don't mean to jump in the middle here. I'll tell you, my favorite Muppet is Fozzie Bear, because I love shitty comedians. But when I went to a St. Louis Blues hockey game, and up on the screen they did celebrity lookalikes, and they put my face next to Sweetums. So if you don't know who Sweetums is, he's the
one
big,
of my
hairy,
favorites.
ugly one.
He's one of my favorites.
Does he have a gold tooth? Is he the guy with the gold tooth?
No, he's the
I
big
can't remember, I
brown
think
one.
so, but
He's the big brown one, a guy in the
he's
suit,
huge.
right?
Oh, I think I know which one you're talking about.
Yeah, Sweetums is one of my favorites.
He's the one that in the Muppet movie at the very beginning is at the car dealership and he follows them and yells,
yes.
I want to go to Hollywood too.
Just real quick, mine is Sam Eagle. I don't know why. I just love Sam Eagle.
I like him. I like when he showed up as the professor.
Just
He's
the
great.
second he gets on screen, I start to giggle, and I don't know why. Sam Eagle, Sweetums, and Animal would probably round out my top three. But you guys go ahead. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Andrew.
So mine has always been Gonzo, just because I've always been the oddball, the crazy one, the weird one that'll always, I'll always do the thing that people are like, no one will do this, and I'm like, do it, fuck it. So I've always identified more with Gonzo. So yeah, I would say Gonzo's my favorite.
All right. Gabe?
I don't know. That's a tough choice too, but I think I kind of like Beaker.
Yeah, Beaker's a good choice.
There's something about him and the way he moves and that kind of stuff. I like Beaker.
Gabe, have you seen the new Muppet Show on Disney Plus? Beaker is fantastic. They have a whole science segment that they do.
Yeah.
He's my kid's favorite now. Because he is hysterical.
It's a good choice, man.
Him and Bunsen are great together on this.
All my friends keep telling me all these things that I have to watch, and they're all on Disney Plus, and I'm like, I think I'm going to
buy
have to
Disney
subscribe.
Plus so you can watch The Mandalorian.
Yes, I know. Everybody tells me I need to watch The Mandalorian now. The Muppet Show.
So before we actually talk about our recommendations and who won and all that, I'm curious. There is actually, out of the 5 of us on this podcast, there is one of us that actually has directed puppets, not Muppets. So, how was that? How was the directing of puppets?
I assume you're talking to me.
I am talking to you.
Clap. Yeah. Well, it's interesting. We certainly didn't go to the same level of detail, and we didn't make our own puppets. Our puppets were actually from one of the guys that was helping us out. His mother's church had these puppets. And if you know anything about what we use them for, it makes it extra fun because it's about puppets and STDs and that kind of stuff. So we didn't make our own puppets.
But how was directed? I mean, you're still directing something very similar to what they had to experience.
Yeah, well, and it was kind of interesting because we created kind of this stage out of PVC pipe and some fabric and that kind of stuff, and then the puppeteers, there were sometimes 2 or 3 of them, and they would be behind the stage, and we had lights, and it got really hot back there, and these people are like kneeling down on the floor. Trying to stay out of sight and just sweating their asses off, and it was challenging. And then I remember after the screenings for the 48, they will bring the filmmakers up front and ask them questions. And one of the guys said, and he was actually kind of a puppeteer, and he had done movies with puppets in them before, and he said, was the puppeteering intentionally bad?
I remember that.
We're like, yeah, because none of us are puppeteers. We certainly weren't going for some like level of excellent puppeteering. We were just trying to get this thing done in 48 hours. So, if that gives you any idea how it compares to an actual Muppet movie.
It was a damn funny movie, so
it's pretty fun. It's still one of our favorites that we've ever done.
I will say this, that at that time I was still running the projectors during the 48. Yeah. And Amanda, during one of the breaks, she goes, "Mike, you have to be more quiet in the screening room." And I said, "Why?" She goes, "Because everyone could hear your cackle during Gabe's movie." Because I'm up in the booth just crying because I'm laughing so hard.
Now I have to say that it's also, not only is it puppets, but it's also a musical. Mm-hmm. And we had to write our own. We wrote our own songs and recorded them the night before or the morning of filming or whatever, and then we played them back while we were doing the puppeteering, so we kind of had somewhat of a lip sync to it.
Where can our listeners find that good film, Gabe?
Well, you can find it. It's called Clap, and you can find it on YouTube, or you can find it on onegenomeshort.com. So right. If you care, it's only I don't know, 6 or 7 minutes.
It's fantastic.
Long, so it won't take too much of your time.
I have to say, worth it. The first screening, I got warned because I was being too loud up in the booth. So, all right, let's move on to our recommendations for this month, and we will start with Tom.
Awesome! I am so happy I get to go first. Since we did the last 2 Christmas movies ever, I'm going to recommend another Charles Dickens movie. Yeah, we've run out. These are the last 2.
No, we haven't.
We've done every Christmas movie.
Not even close.
So I'm going to recommend another Charles Dickens movie. And this came out earlier this year. And it's called The Personal History of David Copperfield. And it's based on Charles Dickens' movie or book, David Copperfield.
It's about the magician?
It's directed by Armando Iannucci. What's that?
It's about the magician?
No, it's not about the magician. Don't be an idiot. It's the Charles Dickens novel, David Copperfield, but it's directed by Armando Iannucci, who brought us TV shows like Veep and The Thick of It, and the movie In the Loop, which is also very funny. As if you like swearing, check that one out. Mm-hmm. But it's an absolutely hilarious movie. He does this really great thing with he just like throws race out, and he's like, I'm just going to find the best actors to play these roles. And it's this beautiful multicultural period piece, because people London was this cultural center of the world in the 1800s, and when we see it, it's just full of all these white people when we watch period pieces, and this is actually more accurate of what it was actually like, with this crossroads of people moving around the globe. So anyway, check out Personal History of David Copperfield. It's hilarious. It's very, very funny. Very well done. So anyway, that's my recommendation.
I have that on my watch list. Sorry, not wish list. Watch list.
It's a little tough to find right now. It's out digitally, and there's no date for the disc, so we'll see.
Andrew.
Well, I am going to actually talk about probably the first Muppet movie that actually brought that magic to where it just became so unbelievable, and that is the original The Muppet movie from 1979. The cameos, the fact that it was the first time you ever saw the Muppets walk, ride bikes, the songs. Rainbow Connection is still one of my favorite songs ever done by the Muppets. It is probably it's just a fantastic movie. If you've never seen any Muppet movie, or if you've never seen the Muppet movie, which is the original, I highly recommend going and watching it. And even if you've seen it, go watch it again. It still holds up. It's still funny. It still warms your heart. So the Muppet movie, I mean, come on, who can't beat a 50-foot animal that is fighting over, someone an old Texan that's trying to kill Kermit the Frog for his frog legs.
And Orson Welles is in it, right?
Yes, he is.
Yes, he is. So the Muppet movie, the original Muppet movie.
I have to say, I think the reason why most of these Muppet movies do age well is because they use a lot of practical effects. Right?
Yeah.
Like everything is tactile. Mm-hmm. And it helps. All right, Gabe.
Well, I'm going to go a little bit different direction with it. We watched a documentary on Netflix called The Social Dilemma. And it was recommended to us by my girlfriend's sister. And she said, you guys need to watch this, and then you need to tell 10 more people to watch this. So I'm hoping that at least 10 people listen to this episode. I don't know how many will listen, but and it's very interesting. It's very eye-opening, and it may cause you to think a little bit more about what you do on social media and whether you're on social media at all. And it has a number of top developers and people who've worked in the tech industry who have seen this stuff firsthand and are a little bit concerned about where social media and the tech companies are taking us, and how they manipulate us into doing things that we may not necessarily want to do otherwise, and how their whole business model is to keep us to get our attention and keep it for as long as possible. And so there are all these interviews with a lot of well-known people in the tech industry, including probably the most prominent one, Tristan Harris, who kind of started this whole ethical, development, ethical technology kind of movement. And then there's some cut scenes in it where they actually have some people acting out some of these things that they're talking about. And at first I thought, oh, this is kind of hokey. But then it got better, and it was really kind of interesting and eye-opening. So I would recommend that everyone have a look at The Social Dilemma on Netflix. Oh, yeah. And, take a closer look at social media and how you use it. Or how it uses you.
I absolutely agree, Gabe. That's why one stupid meme goes up a day, and I don't put any worth into it. After watching that, I was like, yep, this cements everything that I was thinking of or thinking about when it came to social media.
Yep.
All right, Kyle.
All right. So I am going to go with a movie for no particular reason. It doesn't have anything to do with these two movies, but it's just one I watched lately and I kind of enjoyed. And that is Borat 2, subsequent movie film.
Yes.
So is it as good as Borat 1? No. Is it close to as good as Borat 1? No. But there are still some very enjoyable sequences in it, and I find the scripted parts that are between Sacha Baron Cohen and the Belarusian actress whose name I do not know off the top of my head, who plays his daughter, to be some of my favorites. I almost wish they hadn't done any of the hidden camera things. I just would have watched a narrative story between these two. But it is It involves one of the greatest scenes of someone eating a cupcake with a baby on it I've ever seen in my life. And it once again shows some of the biases and prejudices that people have and aren't shy about showing them. Although it's not quite as revealing or artistic as the first one, I still think it's worth a watch. And the twist at the end is great. So stick around for that.
Yeah, and the fertility dance scene.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my God, this girl is just, she is fearless. And I was like, oh my God. I laughed so hard. Yes.
So I think Sacha Baron Cohen is probably one of the most fearless actors I can think of. And he found someone who's an unknown to come along with him and do just as crazy shit as he does.
Yeah.
So
and
for
I'm
that, I think
he's still alive. I don't know how he hasn't been murdered by some of these people.
I don't understand either.
I think he got close.
Yeah, he shacks up with some questionable people in this movie. But yeah, I think it's worth a watch. You won't enjoy it as much as the first one, but that was lightning in a bottle, and I don't think you can ever pull that over people's. You can't pull that wool over people's eyes again, but you can come close. So it was an enjoyable film.
All right, thanks, Kyle. My recommendation is from 1982. Is directed by Jim Henson, Frank Oz, written by David Odell and Jim Henson, and it stars Jim Henson, Catherine Mullen, and Frank Oz, and that is The Dark Crystal. Like, when I was younger, that movie gave me nightmares, and I kept watching it because it just fascinated me, and I absolutely love it to this day. And like I said earlier, I think it helps because they did so much practical work. Like, everything just holds up. Everything is just great. So if you haven't watched it, watch The Dark Crystal. And I'm actually ashamed. I haven't watched the second one yet. And I can't believe I haven't. It's just been very difficult for me to say, okay, I want to watch the second one because I hold the first one on such a high pedestal for myself. So check out The Dark Crystal.
You know, it's funny. Whenever I go to watch Dark Crystal, Labyrinth winds up playing. I don't know why that is. It's just like I was like, I want Dark Crystal, but I want David Bowie too.
You know, for the longest time, after seeing it so much as a kid, both those movies, I had them combined in my head. Mm-hmm. And The Never-Ending Story. Like, I had the three of those movies like all combined in my head, and I could never get a scene correct for which movie it was.
Labyrinth and Never-Ending Story, that'd be a good bout.
I believe it's on our list.
Oh, well, that's why then. I read
it. All right. Let's poke the monkey, find out who won.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? Your winner, by decision, is the Muppet Christmas Carol!
9-7.
Close.
Oof.
That's as close as it gets.
This is as close as it gets, besides a tie, right?
Without being a tie, yeah. I've been threatened with physical violence if Emmet Otter didn't win, just because of who I live with and how much she adores that movie. So everybody keep up the lie for me, okay?
Fair enough.
Will do.
All right. Where can people find you on the Webernets? Tom?
I'm not on the Webernets anymore. That's not true. I'm on Facebook. I'm also on Twitter, but don't follow me on Twitter because it's all political bullshit. So
your Twitter's awesome.
Yeah. Otherwise, people can find me going around town and throwing frogs and pigs out of their homes for not paying their goddamn rent.
All right, Andrew.
You can find us out on ArizonaInkStudios.com, where we have all of our short films, some of our medium-length films, and links to all these wonderful podcasts. So go out and enjoy. ArizonaInkStudios.com.
All right. Thank you, Andrew. Gabe?
Well, I am on Facebook, but after watching The Social Dilemma, I'm not sure that will continue for very long. I don't know.
You know,
So
we've been
don't
saying
go
this for a few years. You and I keep saying, "Oh my God,
I
we hate
know.
social media."
There's
and
always
we
a part of me
still
that's
got
like,
off.
well, I should keep it, to keep up with my family and that kind of stuff. And it's weird because there seems to be a lot of social pressure sometimes to be on these platforms. Like, oh, did you see my post on Facebook? And it's like, well, no, because I'm on there, but I don't ever go look. And is that really the way you want to communicate all this stuff to everybody now? It just seems, I don't know. But anyway, I digress. But you can find our films on YouTube. Just look up One Genome Short, and you can also find them on onegenomeshort.com.
All right. Thanks, Gabe. Kyle?
Well, I've been told by Gabe and some other reliable sources that social media is bad for you, so I'll be abandoning all of mine pretty soon, which means I'll be selling Tyrannosaurus Sex, and I'll be selling Jerk Sitter. So if anybody is interested in those handles, hit me up. They will be
those
available
were social
shortly.
media?
Oh, yeah. I mean, you got to have social media if you want to run a business. How else is Tyrannosaurus Sex going to get off the ground? I mean, it's all about digital marketing these days.
That's true.
So, yeah. I'm on Facebook. I don't have anything else. There's nothing of value there. Don't bother.
I love all of us. We're like, we're on these things.
We're curmudgeonly
don't
old
follow.
men.
Don't actually go there.
We're so good about self-promotion.
Where can you find us? Well,
not really there.
Not really there.
yeah, not at
We're
that
so
place.
fucking Midwestern. We're like, don't trouble yourself. Be a bother.
All right. Well, I guess you can find me on social media, but since it's the new Devil's Lettuce, I don't want you to look for me there. You can find me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. But we would appreciate it if you could leave us a review on iTunes or whatever podcasting service you use. It helps us reach new listeners. If you like us, tell your friends. Please tell your friends. And if you hate us, if this is the first episode you've listened to and you don't like us, tell your enemies. They may like us more. You can contact us at cinesmack@gmail.com. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Just search Cinesmack. For January, we strap in and slam on the gas as Ford versus Ferrari goes up against Rush.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, this is going to be a good episode.
Fuck.
Oh, good.
I love these movies.
For Andrew, Tom, Kyle, Gabe, and myself, happy holidays. Go catch a flick.
Oh, I fell down the chimney and landed on a flaming hot goose. You have all the fun.
We don't have an order.
Oh, shit.
This has been a test of the Southsider Studios podcast system. This was only a test. If this were a true lack of entertainment, your head would explode. Go to iTunes and subscribe to our feed. Just search Southsider Studios.
ET is Ryan Seacrest here. People always say it's good to unwind, but that's easier said than done. The exception, Chumba Casino. They actually make it easier done than said, or at least the same. Chumba Casino is an online social casino with hundreds of casino-style games like slots and blackjack. Play for fun. Play for free for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. Sign up now and collect your free welcome bonus at ChumbaCasino.com. Sponsored by Chumba Casino. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus terms and conditions apply.